All right, so in the previous video, we went over how to open a pull request. And in this video, I want to go over how to review and approve request changes or merge the pull request. So the first thing we're going to need to do, as the person who has created the pull request, I need to make sure that there's actually a collaborator in my repository that can review it for me. There's not really too much point in reviewing your own work. We want to have someone else look at it. So I'm going to go to settings and I want to find manage access, and I'm going to invite a collaborator. And so if you know a collaborator's GitHub account, this is where you will type in their username, and I'm going to go ahead and add my friend Mike here. And so you have to invite them. And what this will do is it will email them, and I think it will also give them a notification up here in GitHub. And so they need to actually react to this invitation and accept it before you can go any further. All right, so the next thing I would do, let's say that they have accepted my invitation. I need to go to my pull request that I opened. I need to assign them as a reviewer. So Mike hasn't had a chance to accept my invitation, but once he has, anyone who has been added as a collaborator in my repository in the settings can be chosen here as a reviewer. So you need to make sure you assign a reviewer, and then the ball is in the reviewer's court. So now let's kind of switch gears and pretend that we are in the perspective of someone who's reviewing this pull request. You can get to pull requests in GitHub. You go to the repository, you click pull requests, and you'll see it, and you can click on it. And it has its own URL, so you can quickly copy and paste this and send it to people if you want them to look at it. So the pull request, there's two main things I want to look at first if I'm reviewing it. I want to read the description and the name and see what this is for. That would be the first step. And then I would review the changed files. So we kind of messed up when we made this pull request because we didn't really describe what this thing is supposed to be. I guess it's sort of clear, but it would probably be a little bit better to add some description here. So let's pretend that we had a little bit better description that helps inform our reviewer about what they should check for. So let's say that, let's just kind of describe what this thing does. So the player enters a trigger region, and I forget what scene we were working in. Let's see what this scene in test level. And a message should appear screen and fade away gradually. All right, so now the reviewer sees this, they'll have an idea of how to confirm that this feature is working as expected. So if I'm a reviewer, I guess the first thing I got to do is clone this repository. So I would go to code over here. I would click this and I would open it in GitHub Desktop or whatever I use for managing Git on my computer, and I would clone this project. So it's kind of it's going to be a little effort, I guess, to get the repository cloned. Make sure you have the right version of Unity to open the project. And the next thing is, remember, when you first clone it, you're going to be on the master branch. So I would want to make sure that I'm on the correct branch that corresponds with the pull request I'm reviewing. You can see that pull requests have numbers like this. So you want to make sure you're on the corresponding pull request. This is pull request number 1 because it's the first one that I've ever opened on this project. And so once, as a reviewer, I know I'm on the correct branch, I would open this project in Unity. It's going to take a while to open for the first time, which is a bummer, just because it needs to generate all of the library and other generated files that we don't need to add to version control. So it'll take a minute to get that all generated, and then once you have it, you're going to find the scene that was referenced in the description, and you're going to look at it and try to make sense out of what the reviewer mentioned. So I guess I would, as a reviewer, I would look at the scene, see if I can find these triggers that are referenced in the pull request, and then test what happens when I walk into them, and see if a message appears, and then the message should, in theory, fade away. And if that happens, I'll say, yep, the functionality is behaving as described. So that's the first check I want to make, is does the feature work the way it's supposed to? And I may have questions. So if I had a question, as a reviewer, you can comment. So you could make a comment and say, I don't understand why it did this instead of that, or whatever. And if there's multiple people on the project, you can ping the particular developer that you're wanting to discuss with the @ just like, in social media. You can reference PRs and issues with the pound key, and just use the full entourage of markdown editing tools to format your text if you want. Now, once you know that the feature's working the way it's intended, the next thing I want to do as a reviewer is go over all of the changed files. And earlier in the video where I talked about adding packages, I kind of didn't go as far as I intended to. Really, if I was going to add a package, like remember we added TextMesh Pro, I probably would do that in its own pull request so that it's just effortless to review. There's nothing really that can go wrong. You just add the thing and then commit it. The problem now is in my pull request, there's a whole bunch of files changed, so it adds an extra burden on the reviewer to maybe filter through all that. But luckily, there are filtering mechanisms on GitHub's website where we can kind of get to the essence of what's important to actually check. So in this particular pull request, there's a whole bunch of files that got added that we would maybe want to make sure, normally we would want to make sure these all make sense, they're named correctly, they're in the right locations, like did you add the script to the script folder, did you add the scene to the scene folder, all that kind of stuff. Again, when we're just importing a package, that can't really go wrong. So I can kind of skip most of this stuff. The thing that's going to be really essential to review for us is going to be the CS files. And so unfortunately, I don't think there's an easy way to uncheck all of these. There is a way to check them all. So this is kind of annoying. And again, why you would want to ideally import a package in its own pull request and then quickly merge it. But I messed that up. It's no big deal. So I just want to leave .cs file extension selected here, and it will kind of like collapse everything that's not a .cs file. And then what I would do as a reviewer is scrutinize this, make sure it matches up with our style conventions, and make sure there's nothing that catches my eye as problematic or confusing. So if there's something I don't understand why it's a certain way, or there's a name that's confusing, or I feel that they should have added additional documentation or comments to any of this, I would make a comment. So, for example, I could request please add a summary to this method. Explain, well, whatever, that's good enough. So summaries, I don't know if I've talked about it in Visual Studio, but the way it works is If you have something you want to add documentation to explain, you wouldn't want to document fix update because that's a Unity thing. Let's see if I can find something quick here. Here's our coroutine. So if you hit / 3 times, you get the summary thing here, and you could explain what this function is supposed to do. So display, so that I would specify this is a coroutine for displaying and fading out a message. All right, something like that. And then you can see you can add explanation of what each of the parameters are for. So this would be the text to display. And this one would be how long the message is displayed before fading out. All right. So now I have on, so you can see this it has a return type. So it's returning something of the type enumerator, and you could explain what that's about. I'm going to delete this part because this is a coroutine. It's not really meant to be used to return anything, or I could explain that in the return part, but I feel that this is sufficient. So I would save that and commit it, and then my reviewer could be satisfied that I added a summary for the method. Anyway, back in review land, when you make a comment, you can then hit start a review, and you'll just go through and continue with all of your comments until you're done. And once you have everything reviewed, you go down to the bottom, or I lied, to go up to the top, and you hit finish your review. And you choose one of these 3, right? I can't choose them because I am the actual author of this pull request, and you're not meant to review your own work like that. But if I were an actual reviewer that didn't write the code here, I would be able to either approve or request changes. And so if I wanted the author to add that summary, I would hit request changes. Or maybe the feature doesn't work right, I'd hit request changes and explain what the problem was. And then you submit the review. So let's just have a test here. So I would submit the review, and now what the author is going to see is my review here, where I either requested changes or approved. Now if I requested changes, like I wanted that summary to be added, the author has to go back in, add the summary, save it, and commit it, and push it to the pull request branch, and then notify the reviewer, perhaps back on GitHub here. So I would go to this, I would reply, and I would say, at whoever the author was, I made the changes, please review. And then they would essentially do the same thing. They would look at the new changes, see if they are satisfying, and if so, approve or request more changes. And then once you finally approve, you can go and hit merge pull requests. So in theory, the reviewer would be the one merging the pull requests. And you can see there's some options here. To kind of quickly explain this, squashing and rebasing are methods for keeping your commit history on master more condensed and clean, quote unquote, but they come at a potential risk of masking some of the small incremental work that was done within the pull request. So if you were to squash or rebase, all of these commits would be smashed down into one single change that gets added onto master, which is nice when you're reviewing the history of master. It's like everything is just adding a feature. But it's problematic if it turns out you lost information in one of these commits that was useful for some reason, like you wanted to review what happened here or something like that. So just part of the history of the project can be lost if you squash like that. Anyway, that's up to you as a project manager, like how you want to deal with this, but you probably want to be consistent about it. For us, we can just hit merge pull request, and you can explain this is essentially a new commit log. So the automatic one is pretty good because the name of the pull request is pretty good. And I will confirm the merge. And so what that's going to do is take that other branch where the feature was implemented and pull it into master. So now all those changes that were on that other branch are now in master. And you can see it says once you've done that, you can delete the branch because everything that was in that branch is now in master. So we don't really need this branch anymore. It's good practice to delete it. So I will delete that thing. And now you'll see over here, this branch has gone away. So you can see if I wanted to re-push it to the GitHub in the cloud, I could, but probably I should just delete it locally too. So I think you can just, let's see, how do I delete the branch that I'm on here? It's a good question. Oh yeah, here we go. You go to branch and then delete. I don't know how I missed that earlier. So you want to make sure you're deleting the one that has already been merged into master. You wouldn't want to delete it if it hasn't been merged into master because you would lose all that work. I know it's merged. I can delete it. That'll put me back on master. If I'm on master, I can fetch, and in theory there would be a change. I think when I fetched earlier, I already grabbed that change, but here is where I merged all that work into master. And so when I fetched and pulled, I got all that work into master. So back on my local copy of the project, it's going to look, it's going to have that feature in it with the triggers and the message functionality. So now everything is successfully in master. All right. That's the gist of how to deal with pull request reviews. I don't think I'm going to do any more pull requests on this video series just because with only one developer like this is not really there's no real purpose in it, but I encourage you to consider this workflow on your projects that involve multiple developers or anytime you can get someone's second opinion to review your work.